Hi guys, welcome to our channel. In this video, we'll be covering the basics of Python, in particular print statements, comments, errors, data types, and input statements. Python, in my opinion, is a really easy language to learn, especially if you are a total beginner to programming. So first up, we have print statements, which are essentially used to print or display any kind of text or output on your screen. And since we're using Python 3, you must remember to include parentheses while printing anything on the screen. Let me show you how. So if we just go print parentheses and in double quotes, any text that's written inside the double quotes will be printed as it is. Um, this channel teaches Python to beginners. And if I save this, also remember to save your file using the .py extension and then run it in terminal this way. So this is Python 3 space and then the name of the file with the py extension, lecture1.py. This channel teaches Python to beginners. So that's all about print statements. Just remember to include parentheses whenever you write a print statement, otherwise it will give you an error, which I demonstrate later in this video. Next up, we have comments. Comments are a great way to enhance the readability of your code because if a third person is trying to comprehend what you've written, comments really help in the process. There are two kinds of comments in Python, single line comments and multi-line comments. For single line comments, you simply use a hash and then anything you write after the hash will be ignored by the compiler. So you can write anything here. And for multi-line comments, you use 3 single quotes followed by another set of 3 single quotes. And then again, anything you write here will also be ignored by the compiler. This is a multi-line comment. So that was all about comments. Next, now we have errors. In Python, you can get 3 kinds of errors: syntax errors, logical errors, or runtime errors. It's always nice to know what kind of error may pop up while you're trying to execute some complex statement so that you know how to deal with it. For syntax errors, they can occur if you miss any important syntax rules. For example, if you miss to include the parentheses in your print statement, then the compiler will show you an error. This statement will result in an error. And if I execute this in terminal, the compiler should give me an error. Yes, it does. Syntax error in call to print. Then you can get a logical error, which is essentially a fault of the programmer. If you apply the wrong logic in solving a problem, then this will give you a logical error. But the thing with logical errors is that you must figure out what the error is by yourself. The compiler will not tell you anything. For example, if you're trying to calculate the speed of a vehicle and if you use the incorrect formula, then the compiler will still give you an answer, but it'll be wrong because you used the wrong formula. So you'll have to deal with logical errors on your own, which is why they're kind of hard to detect. Then finally, we have runtime errors. These again will be shown to you by the compiler because the file will stop executing. A runtime error could be when you're trying to open a file that doesn't exist on your computer or laptop, or it can even be when you try to divide 1 by 0. For example, if you write print 1 divided by 0, this will give you a runtime error because uh, this operation right here is not valid. Division by 0, runtime error. That's the 0 division error. Now I'll be going over some data types. Data types are used to store any kind of data as well as perform operations on the data. And in Python, in this video, I'll be only going over data types that are used to store numbers, which are as follows. So we can have integers as a data type, which can store positive values, negative values, or zero integers. If it's a really big integer, then we use another data type that's called long. That does the same thing as an integer but has a bigger range. And if it's a decimal number, then we use a float or a double. And the difference between float and double is that double has a greater precision and can be used to store decimal values up to a large number of decimal points. And for strings, which are essentially any text inside quotes, we use str. And the good thing about Python is that you don't have to declare the data type of any variable when you're using it. And a variable is essentially a name that's given to a memory location that stores some data. So if we're trying to store a number, then we can use num as our variable. And if we assign a value of 5 to it, then this becomes an integer variable. And we can even do operations on this variable by just using its name. So num plus 2. This should output 7 on the screen. And let's see if this works. And it does, 7. And we can even multiply the number by itself, which would be num times num. And this should give us 25. And it does. So that's all about integers. Next up, we have floating point numbers, which are used in the exact same way, but can be used to perform operations on numbers that have decimal points. So num2 is equal to, let's say, 10.5, and num3 is equal to 15.3. And we can add these two numbers using a separate variable called result. Result is equal to num2 plus num3. And if we output this result, we should get output is equal to, then we should get 25.8. Let's see if this works. Output is equal to 25.8. And finally, we have strings. Now, strings can be stored in two ways. The first way is easier than than the second, so I'll show that first. Let's store the name of this channel. Name is equal to double quotes, and then any text that's inside the double quotes will be stored as a string data type. Let's call it TechOps, and we can print this as well. The name of this channel is name. And let's see if this works. The name of this channel is TechOps, just like that. Next up, we have the input statement, which can be used to take any input from the user. And for this, we just take a variable and then assign the value of the input to that variable. For example, if we want to input the age of a user, then we simply write age equals input, and then whatever we write inside the parentheses will be displayed as a message to the user. Please enter your age. And just one more thing, since this statement in itself will return a string of characters, but we want our age to be a number, we must surround this with brackets and then cast it using int. So essentially what we're doing here is that we're making the string of characters returned by this statement over here an integer, because age has to be a number. Age cannot be a string of characters. It has to be an integer. And then we can print the age as well. So your age as age, just like that. And if we go ahead and execute this, we should get a prompt. Oh, I spelled enter wrong. Let me just correct that. Please enter your age. So I'm 17 years old. So your age is 17.